tubers, tubettes, and of course the colorful caravan of crazy people. I'm here with my friend Derek. Say hi, Derek.
Hello.
Okay, so this last few months I've been hooking up with a lot of guys that have been showing up to the Philippines, and it's been my great pleasure and honor to meet with all of them. And Derek is one of those guys that's here, but his story changes or is a lot different than the usual suspects. Most of the guys that I meet are my age bracket, and we're kind of from that, born in that Vietnam era, if you will. A lot of guys that I talked to served during that time. This guy, his mother was in Vietnam during the offensive and was actually running away from bombs and gave birth in a cave. Am I correct?
Correct.
And was it your father was working for the Americans and supplying intelligence? And then his own personal story about how they escaped Vietnam or left Vietnam and became American citizens is fascinating. Not to mention he's 100% Chinese. So if you're not confused by now, we got Vietnam, we've got Chinese, we've got Thailand in this video. So stick around and I'm going to let him tell you his story. So with that being said, why don't you maybe introduce yourself to the kids and kind of fill them in on what I didn't.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Paul. And it's a pleasure for me to be on your channel here.
Oh, sure.
Once again, my name is Derek. My parents are 100% Chinese, but I was born in Vietnam. If I can, make a small comparison, like South China and Vietnam, they border each other, similar to, Texas and California borders Mexico. So my grandparents, immigrated to Vietnam, and where my parents were born and where I was born. So technically, we're like Chinese Vietnamese. And getting back to what Paul was saying, I was born in 1978, which is after the war. But during the Vietnam War, my parents went through that. My father was in the southern Vietnamese military. And there was a lot of hardship. Like my mother was pregnant with my older brother during the tail end of the war, but it was still active, according to the story that was told to me. And I think she was in the, if my pronunciation is correct, in the Cu Chi area, and where the war was active and stuff like that. But long story short, my uncle, I have a lot of family. My uncle, my grandfather, along with my elder brother, was the original, boat people who escaped Vietnam to come to the United States. And through that process, once my family settled in America, my uncle, got in, got a decent job in the aerospace industry and worked his way up and was able to petition my father and his family to a family unification petition through immigration. And back then it was a lot quicker process. And when we were approved to come to America, I don't know, for whatever reason, we were labeled as refugees. And in that process, we flew from Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City nowadays, in the modern days, to Thailand. And we stayed in Thailand, in a prison, I guess, in that during that time.
Welcome to Thailand.
For the refugee processing, they reserved an entire floor within a prison in Bangkok to house, the Southeast Asians there, which includes the people from Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. And we stayed in Thailand within that prison for 2 weeks for processing, and from Thailand, they flew us to a refugee camp in Bataan, which is close to Manila, up in the mountains and stuff like that. And we stayed there for 6 months. And during that 6 months, I suppose, the purpose of that, as I understand it, was for, to westernize us, and opportunity for us to be exposed to the Western culture, learn English, so on or whatnot, before we transitioned to, like America, Canada, and other Western states. So during those 6 months in the Philippines, I was only 8, perhaps even 9 years old, like early 9 years old. Just my memory of the Philippines was just very pleasant. The people in the Philippines, despite it being all the way up in the mountains, were very helpful to my family, to my parents, to help them transition, with the food, with the ways of life, and gathering water, stuff like that. And I just have a very fond memory of the Philippines. And in the matter of fact, the Philippines is when I was first taught how to swim. So, so that was very pleasant. So when we settled in America, of course, like we worked hard and became, the children like myself became somewhat successful. And about 12 years ago, when I got a chance to travel and stuff like that, I took that opportunity to come back to the Philippines with all those fond memories. And my intentions was to seek out the refugee camp, which is now closed and turned into like a tourist attraction or a museum type of deal. Long story short, never made it up there. But I was just roaming around Cebu area, central Philippines, and it just appeals to my adventurous heart. I'm just like a man-child who just likes to adventure and just random stuff, and which fascinated me, and it brought me back like 4 or 5 times. And most recently, right before COVID, I decided to make Philippines my permanent home. And of course, like all the borders were closed during COVID. And when February 10th came around,
Yep.
like the announcement of the Philippines opening up, all I can think about is to come back to the Philippines. And just in my mind, I want to live here, settle here. And one way or another, it's just like I want to repay the Filipinos, the culture, the hospitality that they have shown to my parents. So the Philippines as a country, just has is just very meaningful, in my heart and in my mind. It's just like yeah, I was in the middle of the project that time, so I couldn't jump ship right away. So I ended up coming over on July 10th and settled in Lapu-Lapu.
That's fascinating. That you had such a 6-month time in the Philippines at the age of 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah.
Because the memory of all that is a little blurry, obviously.
Yeah.
As our childhood
very
memories
fond.
fade. But it made such an impact on you, the 6 months that
Absolutely.
you were here, that it was
Absolutely.
sort of always in the back of your mind that this was where you're going to go.
Absolutely.
That really mirrors an experience that I had in 2005 when I finally jumped out of America. A friend invited me to go to Thailand, and way back in 2005. And it was life-changing for me because I just went there for a holiday, and I spent about 6 weeks there. But I knew when I came home that was it. I was sold out. I was going to go there. I knew it was just a matter of making it to retirement. Now, this gentleman here is only 44 years old, and he's not only a refugee, again, born of Chinese parents in Vietnam, gone to Thailand, then to Philippines, and then to America.
Yes.
Now, when you went to America, your parents didn't speak a word of English,
They still don't.
and they still don't. And yet, he was able to mix with the community over there and get support, if you will, from other refugees,
Yes.
from similar circumstances, backgrounds. I've got to figure that there were some agencies that maybe the states had set up to help the family acclimate. I'm just spitballing here, but is that...
Yeah, very close. I mean, you're almost precise, like those little communities within Chinatown, groups. I don't know how to refer to them exactly. But they help other, like the newcomers, the new refugees that are within the same, they speak the same language and stuff like that. That's why my parents still today, live in a very Chinese-based community, Alhambra, California.
And so you're an American citizen now?
Yes, I am.
Okay. But yet, at the age of 44, we'll just kind of skip ahead here. He's worked a number of jobs, was very successful at it, and is, for all intents and purposes, even though you're not retired, you could be retired. In other words, you have an income stream that you've set up and numerous jobs that you've worked, and we won't get into all the finite details of that, but he's in the same position, if not better, way better than I am, to come over here. But let's talk about your impression of America today. What is it, where it is that you're disenchanted with it? You told me that to some degree. You love your country, that's your country. It was the land of opportunity. You were able to seize upon those opportunities, capitalize on them, and you had all of these roadblocks, if you will. You had language, you had parents that were different than everybody else's parents.
Correct.
For all intents and purposes.
Correct.
You look different.
Correct.
You had to blend in with this culture. You had to learn a new language.
Correct.
And here you are, 44, and I think way before you hit 44, you already hit pretty much the top of your game. You got into sales. You developed not only your English skills, but you decided early on that you were going to seize upon the opportunities that were available.
Correct.
And you also said you were very lucky. So could you touch on that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, of course, like coming to America, not knowing English and stuff like that. Went to the 3rd grade. Of course, I was a victim of being bullied. But fortunately, I came, when I was like 8, 9 years old, 3rd grade on. I mean, I was able to grasp the English language, much better than my parents, which had to sacrifice.
I was going to ask you that because I'm really lousy with language. But I imagine as a kid, you're much more open-minded to it.
Correct.
And you've got less noise going on between the ears.
Correct.
How long did it take, would you say, if you remember, for you to say you were comfortable with the English language? And did you have specialized teaching or teachers or classes that you went to? Or did you just gut it out with everybody else?
Oh, no, of course, we were from 3rd grade, we were placed in ESL, English as Second Language. Classes, so they help us, through that program, which is very useful, help us integrate a little bit more. And then on the regular classes, ESL was just like one period. It just takes up one period. On the regular classes, I had other classmates that were Cantonese speaking. I was able to help me translate and, transition, go through the process and understand the material that was taught to me, which I was extremely grateful for, yeah.
But you never graduated high school?
No, I was a bad kid in high school, so because I was a victim of bullying all the way up to high school, without getting into too much details, it's just like after the first semester of sophomore year, I was expelled from San Gabriel High School where I went. They sent me to a continuation high school, which is, which in my opinion at that, during my years, made a bad kid worse. Yeah. So it wasn't the right environment for me, and I just completely, dropped out of high school.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
There's no crueler human being on the planet than children.
Correct.
Against other children.
Correct.
I mean, that's kind of a broad statement, but I think you guys get what I mean, especially those of you that have been bullied. And it's because you look different, you talk different. Again, they made fun of your family. They made, I can only imagine the jokes that you heard. And so, but what did you do with that? How did you flip it into?
Well, I continued bad until, basically up to the age of 18 where I dabbled in community college for a little bit. That didn't work out too well. So I went into the workforce, and fortunately I met, a friend in the community college that I was going to, and he introduced me to my first job in the getting into the human resource department. After 3 years, I figured, the corporate world is not for me, especially for a person who doesn't have a degree. So I got into the commission sales and profession, and I just thought, if I take the risk, I may potentially reap the reward. So I dabbled into, different commission sales environment, and made, decent commissions. And sorry if I'm drifting off here.
No,
but,
you're good.
Okay,
you're good. I'm relating so much to what you're saying, because I finished high school, but I never made it to college. I couldn't do it. I had to go to work. That was it. Once I turned 18, my parents said, "See you later," and so it was like, go make it or break it. And without that college degree, especially back then, and plus I wasn't really great in school anyway. So the only way for me to make it without working for minimum wage the rest of my life was commission sales.
Correct.
And so for me, I went into the car business. I didn't know what else to do. I drove a forklift for a few years, and like you, I just got disenchanted with it.
Yeah.
It was just like, I'm never going to go anywhere.
Fixed salary.
I'm never going to get any further ahead.
Correct.
So commission sales, no matter whether it's cars, you worked in the funeral home business, you worked real estate, you worked in the stock market or Series E rather, insurance.
Yes.
And you can't be stupid and get your Series E's license. You can't.
Series 6.
I'm sorry,
No,
Series 6 license.
Uh-huh.
So that takes some gray matter to do that. So I would give you, kudos there. Why don't you get into that a little bit? What prompted you to get that license and what you did with it once you got it?
Well, I mean, I don't mean to disagree with you, Paul, but I'm pretty stupid myself. It's just a lot of luck and being a good test taker, the multiple choice stuff.
Okay, I'll give you that one. I passed 2 real estate exams. I don't know shit about real estate, but for some reason I passed the test. So, okay.
No, it's just, in the, because I was just a very curious person by nature, I always wanted to, I knew college wasn't the path for me, because
Right.
things weren't sinking in, and
Right.
it's just so I've always was curious and fascinated with the the New York Stock Exchange and how people make money within that industry. So based on my research, it's just like of course my research came out incorrect. I was supposed to get the Series 7. But I ended up getting the Series 6, which only allows me to trade on mutual funds and not the stocks itself. And along with that, I hooked up with a company who sponsored me, to obtain those kind of licenses along with my life agent. I wasn't too successful because I was young, still very naive and very inexperienced. But after a few years of starving, because it's commission sales, there isn't like a salary tied to it and stuff like that.
Right.
And I was just being observant to the successful salespeople and what are they doing different from me. And I come to a realization that they were talking and I wasn't. It was just as simple as that. It's just like and I started to learn to open my mouth. And as I gain more clients, I learn, the more I learn through experience within that industry. And then after, I've taken the information that I thought that was enough for me, I hopped to the next profession, which is the selling mortgages, which, got me very curious about the real estate industry. And after learning from that, I was just jumping around different sales industry that, it's just a way for me to educate myself.
When you started buying
not
properties in
traditional.
Detroit,
Yeah.
you found these deals. You never saw the properties, but through your connections and the information that you gathered, he told me that he was finding houses in Detroit for like $17,000, $18,000, something like that.
This was only 5 years ago. I just some random person told me about opportunities in Detroit, buying properties from land bank for like $1 and stuff like that, and they rehab it and rent it out. But long story short, I found even a better way for myself that was suitable for myself, buying houses for like 17 average of $20,000 per property and still collecting an average of $760 per month on these houses. And we started, myself and one partner started with 5 houses, buying it just cash without a mortgage or anything like that. And every month that we collect rent, we don't touch that rent money, and we just save it up. And after every so often, we re-up and just buying these houses cash. And fast forward 5 years later, now I'm able to take advantage of living in a country like the Philippines and pursue hopefully my ultimate dream is to do some philanthropy stuff here in the Philippines, and the rental income that I'm collecting is able to support my lifestyle here and not have to work until I'm 63, 65, whatever the retirement age now is in the back in the States.
See, that's brilliant. And you also worked in the funeral business, which gave you a good base amount of money that you were able to work with. Again, I don't want to go into the guy's personal finances. That's not fair. But what he did was so brilliant, and I've since flipped my thinking around because I've been watching guys that are involved in the real estate industry. I used to think of a house, you want to buy a house cheap, and you want to pay for it, and you want it to appreciate, and then you have all this equity, and then you sell it. It's the old buy low, sell high. And the smart money is what he did. You just buy the property, and what you're looking for is not appreciation. You're looking for cash flow. And his cash flow is guaranteed because it's all HUD. And so you can investigate HUD if you don't know what that is. And the people that are living in it are living in a $20,000 house in Detroit. So you can imagine the clientele. They're not real picky about where they're living. They're just glad to have a roof over their head that's paid for by the government. Granted, it has to meet certain criteria to pass the HUD approval, seal of approval. But that being said, he's got $20K invested in a house. It's bringing you $700 or $800 a month, and that just keeps on coming. And so now here he is at the age of 44. He's in the Philippines, and what does he want to do with his money? He's staying in a real modest little hotel room here in Dumaguete. He's not at the top of the line place. And as you heard from him, he wants to get involved in philanthropy. In other words, give back what he feels he was fortunate enough to get. Now, to me, this is the epitome of an American success story. And you're disenchanted a little bit with America and the attitudes of the people there. Can you just, I know this is running a little long, but I really want to make sure we make this point. You're not going to offend anybody. What do you think of the attitude of young people these days in America? 30s, 40s, I call them young because they're your age, 30s and 40s. Where are they going with all this?
Well, I think we had a brief conversation about that a few days ago, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems like back home, we have to identify with a group. Yeah, and if you're not, associated with any group in particular, you're pretty much considered an outcast.
Yeah.
Nowadays. And I just think that anybody that lives in America is very aware of the woke culture and the Karenism and stuff like that. And to me, I just don't feel like it's a place that I'm comfortable anymore, and I don't want to be associated with any groups. And I feel, for the few months that I've been here in the Philippines, I feel like a big rock has been lifted off my shoulders. The freedom of mind, the freedom of thought.
Yeah.
And the ability for me to just, being the dollar being so strong in the Philippines,
Sure.
I'm able to live life the way I want to live, and that's the ultimate freedom. And I understand that, the United States is the land of the free, but, the freedom that I'm referring to is, the freedom of thought. It's just, free from stress.
Yeah.
And I'm able to pursue what I want to pursue here.
I had a little epiphany the other day when I was on my porch after we were talking. Is that, I talk about the Philippines and how it gives you this and, the economic benefits of it, the relationship benefits of it, the cost of living, all this, that, and the other. But it really occurred to me after our conversation that the real nugget that I think I'll just speak for myself.
Sure.
What I received here was my individuality. I was able to be me, as just an individual. I didn't have to join a club to be liked. I didn't have to get into any kind of certain circle of influence. And you and I were discussing how you could talk to a guy one-on-one and he could have completely opposing thoughts. Mm-hmm. He could have completely opposing ideas, and yet the two of you can get along like bread and butter. You can just sit and chat, have a great time, enjoy each other's company. But the minute the guy slips into the group think is where you're losing. And he loses you. Because now the individual has been removed from the equation.
Correct.
The group has taken over, and it's sort of taken over his thought. So that is another freedom that I think you and I have both felt. And I didn't realize what it was till I met you and we had the conversation and it came to the forefront of my mind. It's always been there, I just didn't see it. So there's an opportunity to be the true individual. You were forced to be an individual in America, and I think that's the biggest stroke of luck that you had. I think
agree.
You being bullied and you being ostracized and you not being accepted by the group of the kids, the popular kids, the frat club, the this, the that, the other, whatever.
Correct.
Whatever kids go through, you were ostracized. You were kind of set out on yourself. And you know what? Instead of sitting back on your heels and feeling sorry for yourself and having a pity party, went out and made a living, made a better than average living. Now you've got, you had the balls to go out and try something like buy those properties sight unseen. And now, at the age of 44, I know you're not retired because you're going to keep moving forward and investigating things, maybe setting up something here. But I just got to tell you that, man, it's been an honor and a privilege to meet you. You know, it's a refreshing change. And there's no disrespect to the guys that I meet now, because they're just old farts like me. And so I love them too. But you are that different guy. And that's why I was so anxious to have you on the channel, maybe share a little bit about your life. Now, you've got a YouTube channel you fired up. So we always shamelessly promote anyone and everyone that comes on the channel. So let's do that. We'll end it with a plug for your channel.
I really appreciate that, Paul. First and foremost, the privilege is mine in meeting you. And yes, my channel is Q Adventures. So you can find me on YouTube at, my handle is at Q, the letter Q, Adventures, plural. And yeah, and within my channel, I like to well, Paul put it best, you know, it's just my personal video diary, if I may. And I seek adventures, I seek, for a lack of a better word, roads less traveled. Stay away from, you know, like the touristy areas, but, you know, in the Philippines is inevitable. I'm going to go ahead and showcase a few of that too, but most of my stuff is just, you know, the out in the boonies and, you know, like no tourists and stuff like that. And I hope to gain your subscription.
Awesome. So I'll put a link in the description, and we're going to call it a day. And if you want to know more about this interesting young man, make sure you tune into his channel. All right, crazy people, I will see you in the next video.